FOG Andrew here from the Family of Gamers. Welcome, more gamers, to an exciting, awesome, Unmatched video. Today, we're going to be unboxing and taking a look at Unmatched Cobble and Fog. So this is a 4-player or 2-player or 3-player, however you want to put it, but it's a 4-character box for Unmatched. They only have a few other ones, and we're going to be taking a look at this and unboxing and taking a look at all the characters. But before I do, if this is your first time here, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel for more Unmatched videos coming out in the future. We got a lot of stuff planned for Unmatched, and go check out the other videos we have on the channel as well. But without further ado, let us take a look at Cobble and Fog. So let's take a look at the box and what comes inside. Obviously, you get your rule book, and you get a double-sided board. Now, what's nice about this board is that you get Baskerville Manor and Soho. So you actually get 2 different maps on the one board, which I've been raving about with the other boxes, but some of the boxes unfortunately only come with one board, which kind of stinks, or one map. Now the cool thing about this is Baskerville Manor has these secret passageways that you can go from one to the other as if they were adjacent, which is pretty cool. And Soho's interesting because you have rooftops that you can only get up to from certain parts. It's not like if you're here, you're technically not adjacent because you're on the rooftops. It's an interesting little board that they have going on here. Then, of course, I've been raving about in the other videos the organization of the Unmatched boxes. You have your cards here that you put everything into, and then you have your, if I can get it out, the token for certain characters and the health dials for certain characters, and all go back very nicely into the box. You have your miniatures, of course, on the top. Everything is organized perfectly. So first things first, we're going to talk about Dracula. Here is his miniature, looking very nice. And he has 3 of the sister sidekicks. Now, he has 3 of them, meaning they're all 1 health each. But Dracula has 13 health. Now, Dracula and the sisters have a move of 2, and his special ability is at the start of your turn, you may deal 1 damage to an adjacent fighter to Dracula. And if you do, you get to draw a card. So that's pretty nice. Now, Dracula has some interesting cards as well. He has a 1 defense card, Look Into My Eyes. During combat, you add the boost value from your opponent's attack card to the defense value of this card. So that's an interesting defense card that he has. The sisters also have... Ooh, and I dropped the card. The sisters have Thirst for Sustenance. It is a 3 damage attack. After combat, if you won the combat, you can place Dracula in any space adjacent to the opposing fighter. And then if you do that, Dracula can pull off his beast form, which is a 6 damage attack. And you may discard any number of cards from your hand, and this card's value is +1 for each card you discard. So that's very, very deadly. Now, the sisters are pretty cool because they have Ravening Seduction, which is a scheme card, which is you can move any fighter up 2 spaces, and after moving, deal 1 damage to the moved fighter for each sister adjacent to them. So you got 3 sisters, you could do 3 damage if they're all adjacent to a fighter. Now, if you need to heal Dracula, he's got Baptism of Blood, which is another scheme, recover 2 health and return a defeated sister to any space in Dracula's zone. So that's a good way to get the sisters back. You have 2 of those, so you can get a max of 2 sisters back. And then he's got Mist Form, which is just place Dracula in any space. So he can go anywhere on the board, and you gain an action. So that doesn't even count as an action, essentially. It's basically for a free card, and you get a 3rd action. So Dracula is a very interesting character. The way that I like to play him is kind of have the sisters do their own thing and keep Dracula back until I get Beast Form and Mist Form into my hand. Or if I get something like Thirst for Sustenance, that I can get Dracula to actually go right next to an opponent and try to pull off a beast form if possible, and then keep adding cards to the attack so that I know how... because I'll know how much the defense is, so I'll just keep adding cards unless the opponent plays a feint, but that's a different story. So Dracula is very interesting, plus he gets his special ability, which is nice to get him more cards. So he's very interesting. The only thing that I have to say is that he only has 13 health, which is kind of disappointing. I was hoping he would have a little bit more, maybe, because, it's Dracula, but the way that you play him kind of affects, or is kind of makes sense because of his health. You're kind of teleporting him around the board as much as you can. Now, the Invisible Man is pretty interesting. Here's his miniature before we get started. Looks pretty nice. I really like how this came out. He has, instead of sidekicks, 3 fog tokens, and essentially how they work is, and this is basically his special ability, he can move and teleport basically to a fog token as if they were adjacent. So you see I got the 3 fog tokens here. If he's here, he can go 1, 2 as one maneuver, or 1, 2 as a maneuver. So that's pretty crazy. And while he's on a fog token, he actually gets +1 defense to all of his defense cards. Now the thing is that you can't just move them with a maneuver. The only way to maneuver the fog tokens around the board is by card effects, so you kind of have to think about the placement. They're kind of sidekicks, but they're not, obviously they can't be attacked or anything, but again, you can't move them from maneuvering. You have to use card effects. And for example, his cards, like Surprise Attack, is a 5 damage card. Cancel all effects on your opponent's card immediately. And after combat, if Invisible Man is on a space with a fog token, move that fog token to another space. So that's a good way to move fog tokens around. Plus, it's a good attack. He's got Slip Away. After combat, move 1 fog token to a space without a fighter, and then place Invisible Man on that space. So again, he can go around the board pretty easily with the fog. Or Emerge from Mist is if Invisible Man is started this turn on a space with a fog token, this card's value is 5 instead. So he's got pretty good attacks. And he also has a nice defense here. It is a 3 defense card, Coded Notes. After combat, draw 3 cards, then choose 2 cards from your hand and put them on the top of your deck in any order. So that isn't a bad defense card. So now, he's got some interesting scheme cards like Dracula, for example, Reign of Terror. If Invisible Man is on a space with a fog token, deal 2 damage to any one opposing fighter. He also has Step Lightly, which is deal 1 damage to one adjacent fighter. If Invisible Man is on a space with a fog token, deal 3 damage instead. And then your opponent gets to move a fog token up to 2 spaces. And then his most interesting card in the deck, which he has 2 of, is Vanish, which is you recover 1 health and you completely remove the Invisible Man off of the board. And then at the start of your next turn, you place Invisible Man in any space on the board. So that's pretty insane. And then if you played this as your first action, which why would you, then you have to end your turn. So Invisible Man has some crazy stuff. He's more of a defensive kind of player, or character, I should say. He has some really good attacks, but you don't want to bring him up. He's only got 15 health, which isn't that bad compared to Dracula, who only has 13. But you kind of want to keep him back and teleport him around the board as much as possible and kind of, teleport him here, get an attack off, and then go back if you can, or, go here or do whatever. So he kind of just teleports around the board, and that Vanish card is just insane for him. Now here's an interesting character. We have Jekyll and Hyde. Here is his miniature looking pretty sweet. Now his whole thing is that at the start of the game, he starts as Dr. Jekyll, and you have this token to show whether you're Jekyll or Hyde, and at the start of your turn, you can transform into Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde. But while you're Mr. Hyde and you maneuver, you take 1 damage, which kind of stinks, but he does have 16 health, so it's not too bad. So now the difference between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is that there's cards in his deck that are for only Dr. Jekyll and only for Mr. Hyde. So if you're Hyde, you can't play Jekyll cards, and if you're Jekyll, you can't play Hyde cards, of course. If you know the game, you'll understand why. Now, Jekyll is more of a defender, while Hyde is more of an attacker. For example, Jekyll has a 2 defense card, Scientific Method, draw a number of cards equal to the damage you were dealt, which is pretty good if you have a very high attack hitting you. You could draw a bunch of cards with that attack, from that attack. He also has With Haste, which is move Dr. Jekyll up to 4 spaces. So that's a good way to defend and get out of there quickly. Now, Hyde has some interesting cards. He's got a 5 damage attack, which is place Mr. Hyde in any space in his zone, and then you have to transform into Dr. Jekyll. So there are cards that forcefully make you change forms, which is okay, I guess. But again, at the start of your turn, you can switch back and forth if you need to. Now, that's interesting. A 5 damage attack. He also has a really good card, Forever Hyde, which is during combat, you may discard Dr. Jekyll cards, and you add 2 to this card's value for each card discarded. So that can really screw up your opponent bad. There are 2 scheme cards for Mr. Hyde. For example, Pure Evil. Place Mr. Hyde in any space in his zone, and Mr. Hyde deals 2 damage to all adjacent fighters. And he also has Strange Case. Reveal the top card of your deck. Deal damage equal to its boost value to one adjacent fighter, and then put that card in your hand. So Hyde is the tank, and Jekyll is the defender. So you need to play him kind of interestingly. He also moves only 2, and again, maneuvering while Hyde, you take a damage, which isn't too bad, again, because you have 16 health, but you don't want to take that much damage. So you have cards in your deck that let you move around the board if you need to as Hyde or even as Jekyll, and then you could switch over to Hyde and then attack if you need to. So Hyde is the tank, Jekyll's the defender. He's an interesting character to play, especially, you know, trying to figure out how you're going to turn back and forth from Jekyll and Hyde. So he's got some interesting stuff. Alright, next up is Sherlock Holmes, and here is his miniature. He is performing fisticuffs, as you can see. Looks very nice. He does come with Dr. Watson, of course, as his sidekick. So, Sherlock has 16 health, and Watson has 8 health. Now, everybody in this box is a melee character. The only one that isn't is Dr. Watson, who's ranged. So, it's very interesting. I got a lot to talk about Sherlock, because he's got some crazy stuff that's going to screw up your opponent. Again, 16 health for Sherlock, 8 health for Watson, which is pretty dang good. So, first up, Holmes has The Game is Afoot, a 5 damage card, and then you get to move Holmes up to 3 spaces. Just a good damage card. He's also got Education Never Ends, which is an any card, which can be used by Watson or Holmes. After combat, if you won the combat, your opponent draws 1 card, but if you lost the combat, you draw 2 cards. It's a very weird card, because if you win the combat, your opponent gets to draw a card, but if you lost, you draw 2 cards. It's kind of a weird card, but anyway. And then he's got Counterpunch, which is if Holmes is adjacent to the opposing fighter, you deal 2 damage to that fighter. So that's pretty interesting. Watson has a nice scheme card here, which is Administer Aid. Place Dr. Watson in a space adjacent to Holmes, and Holmes recovers 1 health, and you get to draw a card. So that's pretty good for Watson. He's also got Fixed Point in a Changing Age. After combat, if Dr. Watson is adjacent to Holmes, they each recover 1 health. Not bad, not bad. And then Watson has his just standard service revolver. He's got 2 of these cards in his deck, and it's just 5 damage on the spot. Then, Holmes has 3 crazy scheme cards. For example, Eliminate the Impossible. Choose an opponent, look at their hand, and choose 1 card for them to discard, which is just insane. That'll screw up your opponent's day completely. Master of Disguise. Choose an opponent. Holmes swaps spaces with their hero and deal 1 damage to that hero. What? Alright, that's crazy. But then this one is the most insane card in his deck, which he has 3 of in his deck. Confirm Suspicion. You choose an opponent and name a value. Your opponent must choose and discard 1 card matching that attack or defense value. Their hero takes damage equal to the boost value of the discarded card. If they do not have a card of the named value, they must reveal their hand instead. Wow. That is insane. And the last card I'm going to talk about for Holmes is Elementary, which is you play this card face up as a defense card. So your opponent has their card face down, and what you do is you place this face up. You have to predict the printed attack value of the opponent's card. And during combat, if you predicted the right value, you cancel all of the effects on your opponent's card and ignore its attack value. Wow. Sherlock Holmes can destroy your opponent by doing absolutely nothing on the board without even attacking. he can do some crazy stuff and just get rid of cards in your opponent's hand or just screw up what their plan was. Wow, Holmes is insane. He is definitely a top tier character for me. He's definitely just crazy. He's got crazy stuff. And Watson is pretty good too. He can heal. He's got his service revolver to get off a good attack. Wow, Holmes is definitely a top tier character. Like I said, he is just insane. Alright, so Cobble and Fog for Unmatched. Probably my favorite box in Unmatched. The theme is awesome. Just having these different characters, almost horror characters, except Sherlock, but you have these kind of like horror, Victorian, kind of weird 1800s characters in the game, and they all play very differently and very excellently. They have some crazy stuff, especially Sherlock, doing all that stuff to just mess up your opponent and what their plans were in the game. It's crazy. I definitely think that if you don't play Unmatched, this is the box to pick up. Forget about Battle of Legends Volume 1 and 2, or even the Buffy set. This is definitely a box you should pick up if you want to get into Unmatched. Again, my favorite box. It's great. Let me know what you think about this box down in the comments below if you have it already. And the algorithm says that you must click the video that's right here. And while you do that, subscribe to the channel and check out our Patreon and also the links in the description to our Discord server as well. But guys, that's it. I'll see you in the next one.